Last week, we explored the queen bee phenomenon, why some women struggle to support other women, and why competition can feel more natural than collaboration. But what if the real issue isn't women versus women, but the fear underneath it? I've been sitting with that question and I've landed on a theory. Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna Gabriel, and this is the Flavored Word podcast. Welcome. At the end of episode 13 last week, I told you I'd be talking about the inner critics that we all have and why we stay loyal to an old version of ourselves. But instead, I'm continuing last week's conversation because the theory I've landed on deserves its own space. Before I get to it, I want to share a little personal background. When I was 18, and yes, I know the 18-year-old version of me is not the woman I am today, I remember absolutely loathing a girl from another school. We barely knew each other. We had never had a real conversation, but we were both runners and we competed against each other often. Over time, I developed this intense aversion to her for one simple reason. She wanted the same thing I did, to win. And honestly, that reaction is normal, at least to a point. Fast forward a decade and I'm flipping through my college alumni magazine and I see a woman I knew in school had just published her first book. Instantly, jealousy hit me like a wave. I despised her existence. In that moment, I stared at her photo sitting on the couch, hands folded, her hair styled perfectly. And I picked her apart like a middle school girl who just lost Foursquare. What I should have done was reach out and congratulate her. Instead, I convinced myself her book got published because she must have known someone. Maybe her dad was friends with the publisher, because certainly it couldn't have been talent. No, that role was reserved for me, my own sponsorship of the queen bee phenomenon. But I've been on the other end too, more than once. A few years ago, I was at a large gathering with a number of people, men and women, who I'd called friends at one time. Without getting into too many glorious details, let's just say the fakeness oozing from the women that day was impressive. The men approached me kindly, asked how I was, what I was up to, small talk, sure, but warm. The women, different story. They clustered together in a tight little circle like they were guarding an infant giraffe. A few glanced my way with polite indifference. One even walked right past me after her husband and I had just talked, then acted shocked like, oh, I didn't see you there. Whatever. Did it make me uncomfortable? Yeah. Did it upset me? Absolutely. But as I walked away, one of my more supportive inner voices reminded me they were doing the exact same thing I had done at 18, exactly what I had done when that woman published her book. They had grown spiteful because they wanted the same thing I did. The only difference was that I had made a decision to launch my new life, to confront my monsters, and instead of staying stuck in a destructive pattern, I'd found a way to give myself grace and keep moving. So, my theory, it might be a bit unpopular, but hear me out. I've been thinking, and here's the main part of my thought, at least the part I can't shake. Is there perhaps a primal instinct, not universal, not inevitable, but deeply human, that makes some women feel they have to protect their place in life by protecting their relationship with a partner? Because when I look at the queen bee phenomena, the belief that there's only room at the top for one woman, I can't help but wonder if part of the difficulty some women have with showing up for other women comes from fear, not fear of other women, but fear of comparison, fear that another woman's confidence, beauty, or success might shift the balance in her own relationship. Not because women are petty, not because women are insecure, but because women are socialized from childhood to measure themselves against each other. Think about all the beauty pageants out there. And, I remember watching them as a little girl and picking my favorites and having, of course, no idea what the overall implications were. But do you think that at the end of those competitions, all those women standing on stage, crying, smiling, so happy for the other one, do you really think that's how they felt? Do you think that's how they feel? Or do you think they would prefer to have the crown put on them? Think about envy for a minute. Have you ever been envious of another woman, jealous even? Of course you have. And we all have. And if someone says no, well, they're lying. But what if I said jealousy isn't a flaw? It's a signal. So let's talk about jealousy for a second. Jealousy, I think, is rarely about the other woman. It's more about fear of not measuring up, fear of being compared, fear of losing someone, of being replaced. And social media pours gasoline all over that fear. We're constantly shown curated versions of other women's lives, filtered, polished, and algorithmically, but jealousy, I think it isn't a character flaw. It's a flare. It's a little emotional alarm saying something inside me needs attention. It's pointing to deeper emotional needs, old insecurities, maybe past wounds that haven't been tended to. So how do we develop these instincts, these insecurities? Evolutionary psychology doesn't say women are jealous. It says humans, all humans, develop protective behaviors around relationships when they perceive a threat. Historically, women have faced higher relational stakes, pregnancy, childbearing, resource stability, physical safety, and social survival. These pressures have shaped vigilance, attachment, and mate retention strategies, not because women are competitive by nature, but because survival once depended on it. Research echoes this. People invest heavily in relationships they value. People protect bonds they fear losing, and people compare themselves to others more when they feel insecure. So maybe this whole women failing to support other women isn't women versus women. It's simply humans trying to stay safe. Culture adds another layer, one that's quieter but more insidious. Women are taught subtly and constantly that their worth is tied to appearance, to desirability, relational success, and the whole being chosen aspect. So when another woman enters the picture, even innocently, it can activate old scripts. Am I enough? Am I still valued? Am I replaceable? Instinct. It's conditioning. It's centuries of messaging that says a woman's value is relational, not internal. So let's circle back to the thought of women having an instinctual need to protect their mate from another woman. For the record, studies don't say women steal men. They say humans sometimes pursue people who are already partnered, and that people in relationships often perceive this as a threat. Let me say that again, rephrased slightly. Studies aren't painting women as villains. They're simply acknowledging that humans occasionally pursue committed partners, and that in a world saturated with comparison and insecurity, even the idea of that can feel like a threat. Humans blur relational lines sometimes, and the fear of those blurred lines can echo louder than the reality itself. Some findings from the research I did, because like I said, I've been thinking about this. Many people actually report having entered relationships that began while one partner was previously committed. And full disclosure, I've been in that situation myself. I'm not going to outline the details here because relationships are complex, layered, and deeply personal. The reasons people make those choices vary widely, right, wrong, or indifferent. And the reasons people shift, leave, or choose differently are rarely simple. I mention it because it underscores the point. Human connection isn't always linear, and the dynamics around commitment are often far more layered than the headline. So here's where I want to take this. What would happen if women stopped seeing each other as threats and started seeing each other as mirrors? What if comparison became curiosity? What if jealousy became information? Insecurity became an invitation to heal instead of a reason to compete. The queen bee phenomena isn't about women being cruel. It's about women being scared. So as you move through this week, pay attention to the moments when another woman triggers something in you: insecurity, comparison, jealousy, defensiveness. Instead of shrinking or judging, ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me about me? Because other women aren't threats. They're mirrors, reminders. Just like those two women from my past, they wanted the same things I did. These situations can be reflections on the parts of ourselves that we haven't fully claimed. And when we stop competing with each other in that way, we stop competing with ourselves. So thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you get all the fresh content as soon as it drops. Tune in next week for that aforementioned discussion about learning to quiet the internal critics and why so many of us feel the need to be loyal to our past self rather than our current life. And remember, this isn't a scrapbook, it's unfiltered talk. Have a good rest of your week, everyone.